Jesus is for everyone. Jesus is for everyone. You know, sociologists talk about in-group, out-group theory, and perhaps you've heard these terms. And an in-group is a group with which you identify. You say, I belong, I'm a member of this group. And an out-group is a group with which you don't identify. You're not a member of it. And of course, all of us tend to show favoritism to our in-group and the opposite to our out-group. And this kind of thinking, in-group, out-group thinking, while again, very natural, can also, if we're not careful, become very polarizing. Think Democrat, Republican. Think white and black. Think Huskies and Cougars. Oh, I've gotten personal, haven't I? Yeah. Or in our story, think Jews and Samaritans. I think we'd all agree that we live in a deeply divided and polarized culture. But I want to remind you, so did Jesus. The Jews and Samaritans had a long and bitter hatred for each other that dated back over 7 centuries. That's a long feud, isn't it? Over 7 centuries. Clear back in 721 BC, the Assyrians conquered the northern kingdom of Israel and took them into exile and repopulated the land with foreigners who intermarried with the remaining Israelites and mixed their religions. So we got a map up here, and you can kind of see Assyria up there in the northeast. The route they came down, conquered Israel, that pink section down below, and then repopulated the land with foreigners. So their neighbors in the southern kingdom of Judah viewed their northern neighbors as racial half-breeds whose religion had become tainted. And thus began centuries, 7 centuries of distrust and hatred, in-group and out-group. So one time a Jewish legal expert came to Jesus and asked him, what's the greatest of all the commandments? And you know this story. Jesus said, what? That's right, I can hear it out there. Love the Lord your God with all you've got, all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Now, this Jewish religious expert wanted to justify himself, and so he asked the question, and who is my neighbor? And what he was hoping for was an in-group answer, right? That you only need to love people like you, love your fellow Jews. And Jesus told a story that is the ultimate out-group story. We call it the story of what? The Good Samaritan. Remember, a Jewish man was traveling, was accosted by robbers, beaten and left unconscious on the road, and along came a Jewish priest, the ultimate insider, but he walked on by. He didn't stop to help his fellow Jew. Then along came a Jewish Levite. This also would have been a priest's assistant, so again, very high up on that insider scale. He too walked on by. Then along came a hated Samaritan. And when Jesus told the story, everyone probably held their breath because they thought, the Samaritan will finish him off. Because this was the enemy. But it was the Samaritan, the out-grouper, who stopped and helped the Jewish man at great personal expense. Jesus made a hero of the out-grouper. What was going on here? Jesus' story was meant to blur the lines between groups. The man who asked the question wanted an in-group answer. Jesus gave an out-group answer to show that everyone is in God's in-group and should be in ours. To love your neighbor means that you not only love your in-group, but your out-group too. And I'm challenging each of you today. Here we are on the eve of a controversial election. I'm challenging you to love your neighbor as yourself. And that neighbor includes not just your in-group, but your out-group. To love your neighbor means you not only love your in-group, but your out-group too. And friends, I don't think it's ever been more important than today. Would you agree with that? Thank you.